Welcome to the home of 100 to 1 Faith TV. I'm Larry Gent, and this is the message for Grace Heartwood United Methodist Church on August 15th, 2021. The power of kindness. Let's open with a word of prayer. Lord, your loving kindness is everlasting. Your mercies are new every morning. You loved us while we were yet sinners. This proves your love for us. Fill us with your powers of kindness and compassion so the world may know your love by watching us. Amen. The responsive reading is from Ephesians chapter 4. When you are angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Do not let any negative words come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up. Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, feuding and slander. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as God forgave you. The gospel reading is from Luke 6. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks of you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. So be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. The Old Testament reading is from 1 Chronicles 4. These are the descendants of Judah. Ezra was the son of Judah. The sons of Ezra were Jether, Mered, Epher, and Jalon. Mered's wife gave birth to Miriam, Shammai, and Ishpa. These were the children of Pharaoh's daughter, Bithiah, whom Mered had married. And the sermon text is from Exodus 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. There she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt compassion for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the women took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. Genocide. The word seems too clinical and sterile to convey its awful meaning. Pesticide, insecticide, herbicide, we keep them all on a shelf in the garage against the day we have a problem. We spray them around and the problem goes away. But sometimes the rulers and powers of this world decide that the problem is not a rodent or a weed, but an entire race of people. And sometimes they resolve to exterminate them all. Genocide. This is not a solution sprayed around the garden. This is a cold-blooded murder and rivers of blood. This river of blood ran through the veins of the most powerful man on earth, Pharaoh, mighty Pharaoh. His will was absolute law. His word was the final authority. He was believed to be a god in human form. But it isn't easy being a god, and Pharaoh had a problem. The children of Israel were growing too fast, too many, too strong. So Pharaoh made a plan. He would kill every male child. That would take away the strength of Israel and crush them under the weight of his throne. Genocide. Conceived, designed, and set in motion by the most powerful man on earth. But every great warrior has his Achilles heel, and every coat of armor has chinks of vulnerability. And even Pharaoh had a soft spot. You see, Pharaoh had a daughter, and he seems to have overlooked this fact. Powerful men have very little power over women, especially the women in their own home. As great and powerful as Pharaoh was, the Bible never bothers to call him by name. He was a central figure in the story of Exodus, but he remains nameless and faceless. Not so his daughter. We know her name was Bithiah, and she was the most important person in salvation history, whose name you may have never heard. She had allies in this story, two other women, and we know their names as well. They were a Hebrew woman named Jochebed and her daughter Miriam. Jochebed had a baby, a boy child, born under Pharaoh's sentence of death. At first, he is as nameless as Pharaoh, just another Hebrew boy born to die. But Jochebed saw he was a fine child, and she hid him for a while. Babies, though, have a way of growing up, and she knew she couldn't keep him safe for long. So she made him a little boat, a little ark to keep one small life afloat. And she carried that life raft down to the mighty Nile River. Then she set him afloat. But there was a design in her desperation. There was a method in this madness. For Jochebed put him in the very spot where Bithiah would go to bathe. Do you suppose Jochebed knew as she placed him there that her baby might find mercy in the hands of a woman, even if that woman was the daughter of mighty Pharaoh? When Bithiah unwrapped the child, she knew what was up. This is a Hebrew boy, she said. Hidden in the rushes nearby was Jochebed's daughter Miriam, Moses' sister. She popped up and said, "Hey, Bithiah, what you got there? Hebrew baby?" Now, Bithiah wasn't dense. She realized Miriam had been posted there as a lookout. So when Miriam volunteered to go get a Hebrew woman to nurse him, she had to know it was the mother of this child. All three of them knew what was going on. All three of them were in league together. All three of them saw the plan unfold, and all three of them signed onto the plan of mercy and compassion without a word being spoken. Those of us who are men understand exactly how this works. Oftentimes, the male of our species just assumes he's in charge. And men generally are in charge until the women decide they're not. In those moments, women generally don't have to speak a word. The women give each other a silent look, and if men could decode that look, it would say, "Ignore him. He is not the boss of us." And that settles that. Can you imagine how mighty Pharaoh must have raged and fumed? A Hebrew child? A boy child? You couldn't bring home a puppy or a kitten? You want to bring home a Hebrew? And Bithiah just rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, Daddy, I think I'm going to call him Moses." And that was that. Pharaoh's exalted power began to crumble that day in the hands of his little girl. He was not the first father in history, nor would he be the last, to discover his daughter was the one calling the shots, and he was just along for the ride. Now that's a great story, a compelling story, a story that sets the stage for salvation of God's people, a story that changed destiny and time itself. But all it took was a little compassion and a little bit of kindness. For the past several weeks, we've been studying miracles. Some of them have been pretty impressive, but at the end of the day, the greatest miracles all have one thing in common. They all start with a little kindness and compassion. And they all start with miracle workers like you. Did you know the moon has been more thoroughly explored than our oceans here on Earth? Every now and then, scientists plumbing the depths have been amazed to discover living fossils, species of fish thought long to be extinct, known only through ancient fossilized remains. But there they were, still swimming around. The latest one that's been found is called the coelacanth. And as you can see, it's a huge fish. It lives to be 100 years old. I mention this because it seems that kindness and compassion are harder to find in this day and time than a coelacanth at the bottom of the ocean. People who practice random acts of kindness are not living fossils, but they are pretty rare and definitely living treasures. Now, most churches have a lot of nice people. We got a lot of nice folks here at Grace Heartwood. Oh, we got a few stinkers too, and that's okay. Sanctification just takes longer for some. They're on their way to becoming living treasures. And here's the good news. Whether you're already a really nice saint or a stinker under reconstruction, you can still commit random acts of kindness. And those little miracles can change the world. Yes, COVID restrictions make it harder, but that's all the more reason for us to show the world kindness and compassion. It's so rare right now that any act of kindness shines through like a diamond. One of our church members is an ultra marathon runner, A few weeks ago, she shared how she was out on a run and running out of water. Just when she needed it most, she came to a church handing out free bottles of water. And she'll never forget that act of kindness that came along just in time. One of my churches got fired up about random acts of kindness a few years back. I gave them church calling cards and told them to just pay for the next person behind them in the drive-through line. Leave 2 cards, one for the cashier and one for the next person in line. A couple of weeks later, one of our members said he was in line at McDonald's, and the cashier said, "Oh, this is amazing. 32 people in a row have paid for the next person in line, and 5 of them have left me one of these cards." Another couple in that church often went out to a restaurant after worship. Several other couples would go with them. One Sunday, one of our members picked up the check for everyone at his table, and he asked everyone else to leave the amount they would have spent on lunch as a tip. They left their lunch money and a little bit more on the table for good measure, along with a couple of those calling cards. That waitress got a $200 tip that day. As they were getting in the car, she came running out after them. She was a mess. She was crying and her makeup was running all over her face. She said she was behind on her rent and didn't know what to do. So that morning she prayed that God would provide, and that tip was all she needed to pay the rent. She never forgot that random act of kindness and never forgot the church that did it. I've seen God use bottles of bubble juice to reach people for Christ. Everybody loves bubble juice. Folks just put a church card on the bottle with a rubber band. They put the bottles in a little red wagon and went to a park and started handing out bubbles to kids. Adults like them too. It reached way more families than 1,000 newspaper ads. Okay, so here's the thing. Random acts of kindness are like seeds of compassion. Not all of them change the world. Not all of them take root or bear fruit. So you just have to make it a habit. Scatter seeds of kindness wherever you go. Trust God to change the world one seed at a time. And when someone asks you why you do it, just tell them, Bithiah sent me to change the world with random acts of kindness and compassion.